Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second of back-to-back days of Nobody is Shiftier. Today, we're going to be covering week 11 of the NFL season here. Now, before we get into that, I do apologize. Yesterday, I might have seemed a little bit rushed towards the end of the show, and it's because I got a text during the show that my buddy was coming to make the exchange with me for pumpkin spice and vanilla extract in exchange for ciabatta bread at 5:35, and I noticed I was like 4 games into week 10 coverage and it was like 5:19. I'm like, shit, I got to get this thing moving. So I do apologize if I seemed a little bit rushed. I will tell you that from that point of the exchange, I ended up being at a bar for 5.5 hours drinking NA beers, which for anybody that's been sober at a bar for 5.5 hours, that's terrible. I didn't realize the pain you guys had been going through until yesterday. I still had fun. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from it, but it's like just a giant tease. It's like, why am I here? And yeah, I got to sit down and suffer through that. And now I am here today to bring you week 11 coverage of the NFL season. So without further ado, I'm going to take a little sip of the Bush NA over here. It's one thing I've really enjoyed about drinking NA beers. I do not feel guilty no matter what time of day it is. It's 11:43 a.m. right now. No real reason that anybody should be drinking a beer, but it's not messing me up anyway. What's it matter? I read they're actually good for your heart and kidneys. They're actually hydrating, they say. Okay, well, it sounds to me like I'm crushing it then. All right, guys. For week 11, the first game that we have actually coming on tonight, we have the Tennessee Titans at the Green Bay Packers. Now, I have the original spreads that were out from Tuesday morning, so I can't verify that any of these are still accurate. But as of Tuesday morning, the spread was Green Bay -3. Over under on that game's 42. So when I'm looking at this game, a lot of people are sitting here saying to themselves, well, I mean, look what Aaron Rodgers and the Packers just did against the Cowboys. You know, people are going to be putting money all over Green Bay. Everybody has decided that Green Bay is about to make this awesome comeback. Just keep in mind that Green Bay is 4-6 for a reason. This is not the beginning of some turnaround. Green Bay is not about to run the table and be 11-6. No. That's not what's happening here. Green Bay got a nice primetime game at home against a team that has struggled playing against teams that are playing hard against them. Let me just try to break that down for you. Dallas has typically, over the last couple of years, dominated the NFC East and thus has been coming away with like 12-4s and 11-5 records. And then as soon as they play a team that's good outside of the division, they lose, and it's usually not even that close. Now, I do think this Cowboys team is a little bit different this year. I think that they can actually compete with teams outside of their own division. And, well, shit, it's actually going to be harder this year for them to compete with the teams in their division. So all sorts of shit's different than it has been in years past. However, I don't think that Dallas has the it factor as far as, okay, this game's close. How does Dallas win this? Do you remember how last season ended for Dallas? Nobody can still quite figure out how the fuck they messed that up. So I want you to keep things like that in mind. That's why they lost that game to Green Bay. Terrible clock management, doing a poor job of scheming the offense late in the game when you have a lead. You just got to play better than that. Even going forward on that fourth down, I understand you didn't want to give the ball back to Aaron Rodgers and, kicking a field goal. It's its whole thing. Look, you got to kick the field goal there. Like it was like 4th and 10, 4th and 11. Like kick the field goal. It's fine. Like Green Bay has proven all year they struggle offensively. Yes, they had it clicking for a half. Okay. So for everybody that thinks the Green Bay is coming in here and they're about to get this whole thing going, I'm here to tell you that's not going to be the case. Tennessee, they're probably going to play the same exact style of football that Green Bay will, except it'll be one running back and not two. So I would probably suggest looking towards the under in this game, just because I think you're going to see two teams running the ball down each other's throats. Should be something that's going to be relatively low scoring. I think Tennessee's going to walk away with this one with something along the lines of like a 20-13 kind of win. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of points on the board. And ultimately, I trust the Tennessee Titans much more so than I trust the Green Bay Packers, who have proven to me not only is this been the most the least statistical. Hold up, let me word this the right way. The worst statistical year of Aaron Rodgers' career, but he also leads the league in things like throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage. He doesn't trust any of these receivers, and oh my God, Christian Watson, he's got a guy. Look, it was a great week. I'm sure he's going to try to draw a little bit more out of him, but like I'm sure that everybody just picked him up in their fantasy leagues. Like there is somebody in every fantasy league that just picked him up. You're probably not going to get shit out of the guy. I mean, he's been on the roster all year. I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of that. By the way, he had 4 catches. Yes, I know he had 3 touchdowns. He only had 4 catches. Let's not go over the top on what that connection is going to be. But hey, go ahead, root for it. I think Tennessee is going to drone away with this one. I think it's going to be, once again, low scoring. Ryan Tannehill, honestly, at this point, I mean, I'm not saying he's better than Aaron Rodgers, but I think I trust what his game plan in Tennessee is more so than I trust Aaron Rodgers' game plan and with this Packers receiving core. I'm taking Tennessee in that one. We've got Chicago at Atlanta. This game's going to be fun. This one, when I got the spreads down there, was Atlanta -3. Over under on the game was 50. Look, I like the over in this one. I can start there because whatever is going to happen, there are going to be points. Chicago has not played very good defense this year, and Atlanta's played very poor defense this year. Justin Fields has just figured out ways to put points on the board. They're coming off 3 straight weeks where they put up 30-plus points. I think that Chicago is going to walk in there, and I'm not saying that Chicago is going to win this game because Atlanta is still fighting for a division here. No, nobody in the NFC North is catching Minnesota. All right, so I don't think that Chicago is necessarily in the hunt for anything per se. They're 3-7. I don't think we're gonna see them like, oh, we need this win so we can stay in the playoff hunt. Like you're already done. Atlanta, on the other hand, they're a game behind Tampa, and they still have a legitimate shot at winning that division. I don't think that that's going to be the case, but they do still have that shot. So I lean towards Atlanta winning this game because they need it more. But I do think that this game's going to have points scored in it. I don't know that it's necessarily a 4th straight 30-point week for Chicago, but I think this game has all the makings of like a 28-24, 31-27, something along those lines. I lean towards Atlanta here with the home field advantage, but I do think Chicago is going to put up one hell of a fight, and this should actually be a lot of fun to watch, which I never thought I would have said. If you would have asked me before week 1 or like after week 5, even, I would have told you, oh God, I want no part of that game. I actually think that game's going to be really fun to watch. So for everybody that gets to see that game as it happens live, good for you. You found a rare thing with 2 under 500 teams where it should be fun, as was last week with Detroit and Chicago. That was another one where you're looking at it and it's like, these teams aren't that great, but this game is fun as shit. Game 3 here, we have the Carolina Panthers at the Baltimore Ravens. When I had the spread down here, it was Ravens -12, over under at 43.5. This one's a little bit tougher to predict. Baker Mayfield's going to be making the start. PJ Walker hurt his ankle towards the end of the last game there. And, Baker Mayfield did not do much early on in the year. However, the last time we saw him take the field, he did play relatively well. That was against Cincinnati after PJ Walker threw like 9 yards and 2 picks, and then he got benched and they put out Mayfield, and then Carolina scored 21 against Cincinnati, who, even though, let's be real, Cincinnati's defense is a little bit suspect, it was still relatively impressive. Carolina doesn't have a whole lot in the way of weaponry. So this game at -12, that is a big spread, and Baltimore can absolutely cover this because I do believe that Carolina is a bottom 3 team in the NFL, but they do have the ability occasionally to move the ball. And Baltimore has the ability to just kind of flop. And not that I think Carolina is going to win this game. I absolutely would take Baltimore to win this game. If you're betting money line, you want Baltimore in this game. But that spread is big, and I would probably stay away from it. If I'm telling you to pick one way or another, I'm probably leaning towards Baltimore just because I see it more likely that they win this game, 28-6 than I do this game being, 20-17 or whatever. Um, I I don't like that spread though. I would avoid it, and the over under is tricky too because Baltimore has the ability to put up 35 on their own. They also oftentimes will just put up like 24, and then it's a matter of if Carolina can put up enough. And I don't know what I'm getting out of Carolina this week. I don't really have a lot of ways that I can predict for you what Carolina will look like this week, other than a loser. So again, the only thing I'm confident in here, money line Baltimore. Stay away from everything else if you can avoid it, unless you have some strong insight towards something that I don't. If anything, I'd probably lean towards the under. Dante Foreman had one hell of a game last week. I feel like they're going to be feeding him the rock a lot more. And Baltimore, I mean, they're a run first team. It's kind of a given. So I think similar to the Tennessee Green Bay game, you're going to see a lot of running, a lot of time of possession, less points. All goes in a flow. So that would be my prediction. But Baltimore money line, guys. Next game we got Cleveland at Buffalo. When I took the spread down here, it was Buffalo by 9.5 and the over under at 47. I don't know if Deshaun Watson's actually starting this week or not. It's Thursday, and I still have no idea. I'm assuming that Jacoby Brissett would still start because I imagine that Deshaun Watson's probably going to have to take a week to really get back affiliated with the team. But I don't know that to be true. They might just trot him right on out there. Regardless, I don't feel very good about Cleveland's chances here. The spread is pretty big, and Cleveland has shown that they can stay in some games, but I think Buffalo, after having some real mishaps the last few weeks, particularly in the second halves of games, I think that they've probably spent all week really just working with Josh Allen. Okay, dude, stop throwing the ball when you don't have to. Like we got to figure out some checkdowns. We got to figure out when to throw the ball away. Hell, you can take it and run with it. Just don't throw that goddamn ball that you threw to Patrick Peterson in overtime. Like whatever that was, don't do that again. And I think that that's probably what Buffalo's entire game plan is right now. Honestly, outside of that, I think they're just like, you know what, guys, we don't need an actual game plan. We'll win this game. Just Josh, we're going to work on you this week. And I think that Buffalo is likely to cover that spread because of that. And also, additionally, if Deshaun Watson gets trotted out there, he's going to get hit a lot. Buffalo has a very solid defense, and Deshaun Watson hasn't played football in so long. It's going to take him a while to get back into things. If he goes out there this Sunday, Buffalo's just going to it's going to be Von Miller in his face all day. He's going to have nowhere to go with it because he's not going to be used to the game speed again. He hasn't thrown in football game speed in forever. So I think that would be a terrible decision for Cleveland. But if that's the case, I mean, you could double the spread and I'm still taking Buffalo. But I think that Brissett will be out there. Brissett will at least keep them afloat and probably make the spread relatively close. But I still lean towards Buffalo there. I think I'd probably lean towards the under here just because I don't see Cleveland putting up a lot of points. And even though Buffalo has the ability to put up a lot, they also they can win just fine with 24 points on the board. So I would lean towards the under here, but that one is a little bit more up in the air for me. But I like Buffalo, and I do like a -9.5 because again, I think that the focus this week is Josh Allen. Don't fuck this up, please. Next game we got is Washington at Houston. When I got the spreads down here, it was Washington -2.5. That was obviously the morning after they upset the Eagles. I'm not sure what that spread has done since. And the over-under on this one is 40.5. Now, I like the over there. One thing you might not have noticed with Houston so far this year is that Houston has been consistently putting up points and moving the ball relatively well. Now, when I say they put up points, obviously they're not throwing 35 points up on the board at any time soon. But they're not throwing up a 6 spot for the most part. I think the only time they scored single digits was against Denver, who's got the number 1 defense in the NFL. So I can't really hold that against them. They're not an elite offense or anything, but they do move the ball and put up points. So I think that Houston and Washington will go over that 40.5. Washington, I like that Taylor Heineke's getting the start here. I think that that's a momentum train that they can ride. And even though they're going into Houston, I mean, Houston looks like it's kind of weird to say because I do believe that they are currently they're in my power rankings as number 32, worst team in football, but they're still not like this terrible team is the funny thing, because most of the time you look at the landscape of the NFL, right? And you see 4 or 5 teams and you're like, wow, those are good teams. And especially like 2 or 3 of them that you're like, those are the guys. And then there's like another, 3, 4 teams. You're like, those guys have a chance. And then there's good teams, there's average teams, there's below average teams, a lot of the Saints kind of stuff. And then you usually have some really bad teams. I don't know that the NFL necessarily has a really bad team. We've got teams that aren't good. Houston being one of them, Carolina. I still don't feel very good about Indianapolis. There are bad teams in the NFL, but they're not terrible. You know what I mean? Because in years past, we've had Jacksonville's and the Jets and for a long time Cincinnati, where they were just always really bad. And that's not the case right now. I honestly think even with Houston being the worst team in football, they're not a terrible team. But when I look at this game, I mean, it's Washington by 2.5. I like Washington on that spread because I think they win the game, and 2.5 points, that means you got to win by a field goal. Most of the time, if you're going to win a football game, it's going to be by 3 or 4 points. That's like the average football game margin. And I would lean towards Washington being able to do that. Biggest thing I would take in this game beyond everything else, though, is the over on 40.5. But I do like Washington minus 2.5 as well. Next game we have here is Philadelphia at Indy. Ooh, let me take a sip of the beer on this one. This is actually, I talked about this on Jacked and Canned. This is my favorite line of the week. It was Philadelphia minus 8, and I am hammering that line. I know it's a big line, but listen to me here. Indianapolis, they just got this big win, right? Emotional thing. They brought in Jeff Saturday, new head coach. Emotion took over. Matt Ryan had a 39-yard run. God damn it. We got the win. Look, for them, that's their Super Bowl. They just had their best game that they're going to have this year. Totally ragtag kind of group there as far as what they were able to put together. You put Matt Ryan back out there. Jeff Saturday was a consultant for the team. He's never had any NFL coaching experience, and really that's just showing you how poor the Raiders are as a football team this year and kind of what they're going through. Because, again, the Raiders even aren't a terrible football team, and they are scoring points just fine, but they just don't have any ability to win. I mean, they've been blowing 17-point leads left and right. They're like, I just don't get it. And on top of it, they've gone through some injuries. Renfro's been out. Waller's been out. I mean, they're hurting too, but really the Raiders are going through something internally right now that is just not pretty. The Colts were able to capitalize on that in what was the biggest emotional week that they could have. They brought in a new coach. They got behind him. It was all rah-rah. Well, that shit runs out quick. They're going up against the Eagles, who up until Monday were an undefeated team in football. They just had their first loss of the year on national television. They are not happy. The Eagles are going to go into Indy, and they are going to absolutely embarrass them. I'm thinking this game's probably going to be something along the lines of about 38-10. Maybe even, if anything, I'd actually say that it's more likely that Philly scores over 40 than Indy scores over 20. So I think this is going to be an absolute just demolishment here. I really don't think that the Colts have anything going for them in this game. I think that the Eagles are going to not only out scheme them, but outplay them, out talent them, out everything them. And I'm taking the Eagles -8. That's my, I will tell you guys, that is my favorite pick of this week. Fine if you disagree, but you go ahead and watch all the teams that have felt like they won their Super Bowl in week 10 to, almost get back to 500, and then tell me how that goes for them the rest of the way. Also, tell me the amount of times that somebody just comes in off the street, starts picking up an NFL head coaching job without prior coaching experience and does anything at all. I don't know the last time it happened because I can't think of a time that it ever happened. I don't feel good about this one. So take Philly -8. I'd say take the over because I think Philly's going to damn near hit it themselves. I think if Philly if Indy puts up, 6, 10, should be enough. So I like Philly and I like the over there. Next game we got the Jets and the Pats. It was the Pats -3 and the over under at 38.5. I'm taking the under for sure there because honestly, I don't think either team scores 20. This one's tough for me to call. I think that the Jets are a better team than the Pats are, but I think they match up terribly against the Pats. I know that we got to see it a few weeks back, and I want you guys to scrub that out of your memory for just a moment, only because I'm not trying to do the thing where, no, we just saw it 3 weeks ago. No. Totally different scenario here. Jets are coming off a bye, which makes this one a little bit tougher because they've had time to prep on this one. And I think that there's a realistic shot here for them to win. But I think they match up really poorly against New England because the thing that New England can do better than anybody else in this league, they've been able to do it this way for the last 23 years. Belichick's just had this thing down. His defenses have always schemed very well in the way where they can shut down one thing for you. The Jets, without Breece Hall, have not been able to run the ball as consistently. Now, the mixture of Michael Carter and James Robinson has been solid, but it's clearly not what it was with Breece Hall. Now, what's that leave? Zach Wilson. I don't like Zach Wilson's chances against average defensive scheming as far as they don't have to care much about what Zach Wilson's doing. Make sure that you got a guy on a guy. Zach's probably going to fuck it up. And I hate to say it because I want the Jets in this one, man. Like I am rooting for my breaking down the tape guys. I want the Jets to win this. I want the Jets to be good. Hector has been shit talking the Pats all like last Sunday. He did. I don't even know if he was actually watching football. He was just sitting there blowing all of our phones up, talking to us about how much the Pats are going to get wrecked next week. I want this for the Jets. But picking this, not coming from a fanhood standpoint, coming at this objectively, I think that the Pats match up too well against specifically the Jets. I think they're going to take away the majority of the run game. It's going to be about Zach Wilson. I just don't trust Zach Wilson. So I'm taking the Pats here. I'm thinking this game's probably going to be like 17-13. I love the under in this game because I don't think either team's going to score a lot. Keep in mind, too, the Jets have one of the best defenses in the league as well. So the Pats and the Jets both have great defenses. The Jets are going to want to try to run the ball. The Pats are going to stuff the run. I think this game's going to come down to Zach Wilson making a couple of bad decisions, and that's really going to be the difference. So I'm taking the Pats there, regrettably, but honestly. We got the LA Rams at the New Orleans Saints. Matt Stafford slotted to come back this week. Cooper Kupp not slotted to come back this week or anytime soon. He's out for at least 4 weeks. Jameis Winston not getting the start, even though he is cleared to play. It will be Andy Dalton once again. This one was New Orleans -3 and the over-under at 39. This one's tough. I lean towards New Orleans as far as winning this game, and thus I would take them on the spread. I very rarely bet a team to lose by less than 3. Like there was one time when I nailed it. I took it was a Seattle LA Rams game, and I took the Rams to win, and I took the Seahawks +1.5. And the Rams actually won by a point. And I was like, yes, Yes. But let's be honest, I did that to hedge my shit because I wasn't actually sure who was going to win that game. When it's a 3-point spread, I'm probably just going to take the team that I got winning the game to also cover the spread because it's more likely that they'll win by 4 than it is by 2. So I'm leaning towards New Orleans on the spread there. It is in New Orleans. The over under at 39. That one's tough because, look, I know the Rams have struggled offensively and they're missing Cooper Kupp. So you think, well, they're probably not going to put up a lot of points. But if they put up, say, 16, all right, that leaves 23 points to be scored. New Orleans could probably put up 23. It gets tough there. I think I lean towards the under just because maybe the Rams can't put up 16. Maybe the Saints only put up 20. But that one's tough. And again, I only like New Orleans on the spread because I like them to win this game, and that spread's dead on what you give a home team. So I lean towards New Orleans there. They got to give Kamara the ball more than they did last week. 8 rushes, 3 catches out of the backfield. Not enough touches for Kamara. Kamara's going to have the ball in his hands. He's your most dynamic playmaker. They're really going to have to focus in on that. From the Rams standpoint, I don't honestly know what you go for here. Maybe you really try to feed the ball to Allen Robinson because, like, you brought him in and he hasn't done shit. He's got, I know he had 1 touchdown in like week 2 or 3. I don't know if he's had anything since. He ain't been playing well. Without Cooper Kupp there, you're going to need him to step up. Whew. I'm going to take a little sip of the beer here. All right. We move over to Detroit at the Giants. Giants -3 here. Detroit's dangerous enough that, I mean, the cushy 7-2 Giants right now, I could see him dropping a game here, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Detroit has recently refound their offense from early in the season, which I think is attributed to the returning of DeAndre Swift as well as Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think that without those 2 guys, their offense, that's when we saw them putting up very little points for like 3 straight weeks. They got it back now. I think that Detroit's fine offensively. They're going to be able to move the ball and put up some points. But the Giants, I mean, they've been winning games in the shittiest way possible. But the thing is that they are winning those games. Like they're barely beating bad teams. I remember when they beat Green Bay, we were all like, oh my God, yeah, they beat Green Bay. Well, look, Green Bay ain't that great either. The one win I could really give the Giants that I was impressed by is the Baltimore win. Outside of that, I haven't seen anything out of the Giants that's impressed me yet this year. But the Lions haven't done a whole lot in the way of impressing me either, outside of the fact that I'm shocked they've been able to put up the amount of points that they have. So I think this is going to be yet another kind of just boring ass Giants win where they probably win this game, I don't know, 24-20. So, something along those lines, which would put this also at an under. If anything, maybe I lean towards this going over because I could see these teams putting up a little bit more points than that. Maybe the Giants. The thing is, the Giants struggle to put up more than like 23, 24 points. They just keep beating up on bad teams and it's pissing me off. Like, I'm sick of the Giants, but I think this is just another point where they're going to get another W. I think they're going to come out of this 8-2, and I still won't feel like they're a very good team. They're going to have to do a lot more to show it to me, but I'm taking the Giants in this one. Daniel Jones, he's playing fine. They're going to have to give the ball to Barkley less than they did last week because, seriously, that's your only shot at winning a playoff game. It's having Saquon Barkley in your backfield. If he's not there, you're a first round out, and it's not even close. I think with him there, you're probably still a first round out, but you might keep it close. So, I mean, I guess ultimately it's not really any different, but if you want a chance at all, you got to keep Saquon Barkley in your lineup. Do not feed him the ball 35 times again, Giants. Just don't. Don't be dumb. Next game that we have is the Las Vegas Raiders at the Denver Broncos, a game that, although interests me, I also don't want to watch. I kind of want to know without seeing. I feel bad for Vegas. I can't say I feel bad for Denver, but I do feel bad for Russ as a Seahawk fan. I mean, I got an action figure of Russell Wilson in my bedroom. Like, come on. When he left, Every Seahawk fan was like, thank God, good fucking riddance. I'm like, I don't know about all that. Granted, yes, I mean, it looks like it's panned out, but Seahawk fans like immediately turn on the guy. I'm like, no, the guy he brought us our only Super Bowl. Like, love him. So I feel bad for him. And it also pains me to do this, but this is one of my money picks this week. I did take Denver -2.5. I just think that they win this game because the Raiders are in shambles right now. We just saw the Colts with not even a real coaching staff beat the Raiders, and I think that Denver, although I could argue they also don't have a real coaching staff, I mean, they should win this game. I don't like betting Denver because I bet them early on this year when I thought they were going to be a good team, and it's been so disappointing that I want to stay away from them entirely. But when I looked at the spreads this week, there's not a lot of them that I really like. I like Denver. It was -2.5. I'm like, well, they win the game. They probably win by at least a field goal, right? Although it will be close because the Raiders, although they have lost a lot of games, other than that 24-0 loss to the Saints, I can't think of a time that they've just been blown out. I don't know, man. This one's tough, but I like Denver -2.5 in this one. The over-under on this is 41.5. I'm taking the under simply because Denver scored 20 points this year one time. I mean, that's easy math. If they're going to win and they score less than 20, that also then means that Vegas scores less than 20. The two teams together do not make 40. I think the under is a pretty easy hit here. I mean, watch now, this game will end up being like 38-35. But honestly, I really feel good about the under in this game. I've seen Denver put up 20 points one time and they put up 21. It was that morning game in London right before their bye. That was the one. And they put up 21. So, sorry. Wow. I do like Denver in that one. We're going to move over to Dallas, Minnesota. Another one of my money picks this week. Dallas -1, and the over-under is at 47.5. Minnesota just came off the biggest win they had this year. They had to fight and claw to get that. And also, I mean, yeah, the Bills kind of gave it to them. But that didn't come from a lack of effort from Minnesota. It wasn't like Buffalo was like, here, have this game. And then Minnesota just like took it and they were already in. Well, I was going to say, and they were already in the end zone, but at one point that's actually exactly what happened. No, I do think that Minnesota's coming off of a big time high though, and Dallas is coming off of a big time low. Both were games that were widely watched by audiences, which keep in mind that does matter. That's something where we talk about Kirk Cousins, for example, in prime time, and not to say because he was not because he's playing in this specific game, but when a team gets embarrassed on national television, they tend to come back and play much better the next week. And for especially Dallas, they weren't one of the night games, right? But they were part of America's game of the week because Dallas always is. So they're usually the Fox broadcast from 4:25 to 7:30. And I look at that game last week and I say Dallas is probably very embarrassed coming off of that one. Minnesota's coming off of a high. I think Dallas is going to take this game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but the spread is -1. Pretty much all Dallas has to do is win this game, and you get your money line, you get your spread. You can just tie them together in a parlay right there. The over-under at 47.5, I could see that going either way. That would essentially equate to the over. It would have to be at least 24-24. I mean, I could see this game being 24-21. I could also see this game being 31-28. I could see this one going all over the place. I'd shy away from the over-under, but I do love Dallas -1. That was my second favorite one behind the Philly-Indy game. As far as I'm concerned, Dallas, they really need to stick with their run game because Tony Pollard has been proving time and time again he is your best running back. Keep feeding him the ball. He's going to pick you up a lot of yards. He's very quick. He's very fast. He reads holes well. He makes good cuts. Tony Pollard's a good running back. You obviously have a major weapon in CD Lamb at receiver. Utilize it. Dalton Schultz, pretty good tight end. Going to throw that out there too. Dallas has had good luck with tight ends over. Granted, I know Jason Witten was there forever, but Dallas has had a good tight end in their system for quite some time. Minnesota, it's not to say that I don't think highly of Minnesota, because after that Buffalo win, I do truly value them more than I did prior to that game. I thought Buffalo was going to somewhat walk all over them and kind of prove to me what I thought, which is that Minnesota is not a very good 7-1 team. Now at 8-1, I'm looking at Minnesota and I'm saying, okay, you've proven to me that you belong in the conversation. I still don't think that they have the capability of beating Buffalo again. I don't think they have the capability of beating Kansas City. I don't think they have the capability of beating Philadelphia. And honestly, I don't know that they are better than Dallas. Dallas is a little bit shakier. This game is going to be interesting, but I do think that I really like Dallas -1 here. They're going to come back to play really as, retroactively to defend what they just did against Green Bay last week. And again, Minnesota's coming off of a high, very draining game. They're probably going to come out a little bit flat. Next game, we got Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. It is Cincinnati -5. Over under on this one is 41.5. I mean, you can keep in mind that Pittsburgh did beat Cincinnati earlier this year. I mean, I like Cincinnati to win this game, although that spread, here's one thing to keep in mind. Divisional rivals tend to play very, very tight games. And the AFC North specifically, outside of basically Cleveland for the most part. Now, granted, they've been a little bit different for the last few years, but Cleveland for a pretty long time has been a little bit out of this when I say this division. But these teams play each other well, even when one of the teams isn't very good. So, for example, there was a time where Baltimore was actually pretty poor, a little ways back. We're probably talking about a decade or so. And I remember Pittsburgh at that time. That was right around the time they won their Super Bowl with the James Harrison interception, all that. Those two played to a field goal both times they played each other that year. It was like, well, yeah. I mean, these teams play each other really tight. So I don't think that I love the spread at -5, only because Pittsburgh's at home here, and I could really see this game being a 3-point game one way or the other. I lean towards Cincinnati to win this game just because I think that they have so much more talent on their roster than Pittsburgh does. TJ Watt's obviously back in the lineup, which makes Pittsburgh an entirely different team. I don't know what the status of Minkah Fitzpatrick is. I know he didn't play last week. I don't know if he's playing this week. That's obviously a big difference maker. I know Jamar Chase is still going to be out for Cincinnati as well, so they're missing their major weapon. However, they do still have T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, so I mean, they still have guys, plus Joe Mixon's been running the ball very well this year. I think this game's going to be very close, and I would probably shy away from the spread. However, I do like Cincinnati to win this game. The over-under set at 41.5. I'd lean towards the under because I think Pittsburgh will slow Cincinnati to the point where they will score less points than they are capable of scoring. And again, Pittsburgh, even though I think they will keep this game close, they don't have the ability to put up a lot of points. So I actually think this game will be something along the lines of like a 20-16, maybe somewhere in there. I would take the under in this one. We're going to move over to the Sunday night game. Fun game. Kansas City at the Los Angeles Chargers. Kansas City -7. Now, biggest key to this, because I have not made a pick on this game yet, and there's a reason. I don't know if Keenan Allen and or Mike Williams is coming back this week, and that's a difference because we kind of got to see it last week against San Francisco with the Chargers. When they don't have their weapons, there's not a lot that they can really do. Justin Herbert's a good quarterback, but Justin Herbert's played a little shaky this year. There's talks that, there's something going on, either his ribs, his sternum, that something in his torso is not quite right. But when you also take away his number 1 and number 2 weapon, well, that hurts. And then Gerald Everett went down last week. I don't know what his status is for this week. I mean, that's probably your 3 top targets as far as receivers go. And then you've got you still got Austin Eckler, and that's a big key. If they don't have those guys, they're going to have to utilize Austin Eckler a hell of a lot better than they did last week. When you look at what they did last week against San Francisco, they pretty much ignored the fact that they had Austin Eckler. And granted, yeah, he wasn't getting a lot when he was getting the ball, but you got to keep feeding him the ball. He's one of the best running backs in the NFL. Kansas City, conversely, they look like the best team in football to me. I wouldn't be shocked if this game ends up with Kansas City putting up a solid 31, 38, something like that. For me, it's a matter of if the Chargers had their guys. And even if they have them, I'm not sure that they hang in there. We obviously saw these teams play early on in the year, and it was a close game, which I thought it would be at that point as well. But as the landscape of the NFL has changed, we've now seen the Chargers. It looks like Justin Herbert's been playing a little bit beat up all year, really since, I believe, that Kansas City game. And that was also, if I'm not mistaken, week 1. And it looks like Herbert never really came back to at least anything close to his 100 percentile. Kansas City has just kept growing and growing and growing. And, we'll see what the status of Juju Smith-Schuster is. I know he's got a concussion from last week, and he's kind of vying for chances to get the play this week. But, I mean, they've got guys between Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Kadarius Toney, Travis Kelce, Sky Moore. They've got weapons, and they're not afraid to use any and all of them. Patrick Mahomes has totally shifted his game. He was already the best quarterback in football, and he made himself even better. I've never seen anything like Mahomes. I hope everybody just appreciates what they're watching when they're watching Patrick Mahomes play football, because there's nothing I've ever seen like it. And I don't know that I'm ever going to see quite this ever again. So I'm embracing every time I see that guy play. I honestly, I'm not somebody to get jerseys outside of my own teams. I did it for Reggie Bush, and I almost did it for Michael Vick, but I also was too young and I didn't have my own money. But I almost one time, instead of buying a bunch of food for myself, I almost bought a Mike Vick jersey. Because I mean, I love me some Mike Vick and I love me some Reggie Bush. Patrick Mahomes is probably the other guy that I'm like, you know what? I'd rock a Mahomes jersey. I love watching that dude play. When I'm really looking at what I think this game's going to be, I would say it's more likely the Kansas City covers the spread. I would absolutely take a money line here, but I think it's more likely they cover the spread than they don't. Even if Keenan Allen and Mike Williams play, chances are they're not playing at 100%. They're probably playing somewhere between 70 and 85. And like I said, Justin Herbert looks like he's been playing at 70, 75% all season. I just don't feel that the Chargers are healthy enough to really keep up with the Chiefs. The over-under on this is set at 50. That's tough because, I mean, if Kansas City puts up a 35 spot, I think the Chargers are going to put up more than 15 points. I do. But I could also see this game being, actually, I could see this being the same score as Kansas City's last week. It could be 27-17. That would put it at 44. So, I mean, that one's a little tough. I think I would lean towards the over because I think it's more likely the Kansas City puts up some points than they don't. But the over-under on that's tough. But I like Kansas City money line above all else. I do like Kansas City on the spread more likely than I do taking the Chargers here. But I do think if those guys come back healthy, there's a chance that the Chargers keep this to being a very close game. Before the last game here, little sip. Monday night, we have the San Francisco 49ers at the Arizona Cardinals. Spread is San Francisco -8, and the over-under is set at 43.5. So this one is going to be a little bit funny. One of which, Kyler Murray says he feels better. Coaching staff hasn't declared that he's playing or not playing. The funny thing is I think if Kyler Murray plays, that obviously brings in a different element. But I think even if it's Colt McCoy, I don't know that I change what my pick is here. I like San Fran to win the game, but I think I like Arizona on the spread because 8 points is a lot, and San Francisco doesn't beat teams by multiple or by double digits. They're not a multi-score winning team on a regular basis. San Fran typically is going to beat you by one score. That's the way that San Francisco wins football games. And yeah, it's boring. It's shitty sometimes, but that's just who San Francisco is. They're not this dynamic, high scoring octane offense that is going to put up 45 points on you. That's not them. They're probably going to put up a slow 23, 24. And Arizona, I mean, if Kyler Murray plays, they could get the upset, but I don't think that they will. I would lean towards this game probably being like 23-17, 23-20, something in there. Over under set at 43.5. So I'd probably lean towards the under on this one. I know I'm saying a lot of unders. I just want you guys to know that I'm something along the lines of like, hold up, you know what? I got it in this notebook somewhere. Because for anybody that wants to doubt me taking so many unders and saying, no, there's no way, there's no way. I've been taking unders all damn season. And my over unders for the year, I'm 87-62. I know what I'm talking about with these over-unders, and a lot of them are just unders. There's a lot of good defenses and kind of poor offenses right now in the NFL. So I'm thinking San Francisco money line, Arizona covers the spread, even if it is Colt McCoy, because keep in mind, he is fine at running a game. There is nothing wrong with Colt McCoy being in your lineup this week. And it's against San Francisco, who, let's be honest, they're not a juggernaut. They're not going to put up all these points against you. They're likely going to win this football game. I would actually put the percentile chance on that at like 80% San Francisco's way, maybe even a little bit higher. But I think that Arizona covers the spread, and I think this thing goes under 43.5. I mean, San Francisco's been able to run the ball differently than every other team in the NFL, with now the exception of Miami, who's doing the same shit for years. That's what San Francisco has been doing. They're going to keep the ball. It's going to be ball control offense. And I mean, when the Cardinals have the ball, especially if it's not Kyler Murray, you're going to see a pretty good feeding of James Conner, who, you know, he averages like 3.2 yards a carry. So that's just going to run clock and not do a whole lot. But Colt McCoy, he can pick up 6-7 yards in a play. He's not one of these guys that's going to launch the ball downfield. You're not going to see a lot of 27-yard gains from DeAndre Hopkins, but you're going to see 7 yards here, 14 yards there. Maybe somebody breaks one and brings it 23 yards. Like, there's stuff that Colt McCoy can do within this offense to really keep it moving. And I think that regardless of who the starting quarterback is, Arizona is going to keep this game closer than 8 points, because really it's more so a facet of how San Francisco plays football. All right, guys, that's going to do it for week 11. Keep in mind, just take Philly now. Like, I don't care what the spread is right now, because I'm sure it's different than that 8 points that I had. And I don't even know which direction, because I'm sure a lot of people are putting money on Indy because they're like, oh, Saturday's the answer. He's Jeff Sunday. Shut up. Get out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, until next week, this has been Nobody is Shiftier.